whenever everybody goes home. Because I take medication and stuff, and I get depressed and all sitting there on my own.
What is it about the towers that does that to your head?
I don't know. Just the music and the noise and all. It's not very, you don't get very much privacy either, like.
Inevitably, this kind of lifestyle leads to another problem: drugs.
I think it comes with the territory, like. It's easy accessible in any one of the street corners.
So you say, it's easy accessible, so there'd be a lot of dealing.
There's at least one flat in every tower you could go to bed.
So there's you're saying there's at least one person in every tower you could go to buy drugs?
Yeah.
And yet there's young families living in them?
I've only moved in and I know it already.
The drugs issue is one element of antisocial behaviour here. Excessive partying is another. Angie's well aware of it. She tells me of one of her elderly friends who lives in another block that has been plagued by noise. Her friend told her that on one occasion a motorbike was driven up and down the stairwells, and when she complained,
she ended up tortured by getting faeces smeared over her door, them using that particular landing as a toilet, and I think basically the point where she's in a sense like a prisoner in her own home.
I meet another resident who says she suffers from depression. Brenda has been living in the towers for 6 years. Like so many of the people I've talked to, she invites me in to see her flat.
I've no heating. I have to use a halogen heater and the electric fire, which is actually costing me. It's actually costing me an awful lot to run.
You say you're fond of the flat,
but
what's it like living in the towers generally?
Well, it depends what mood I'm in the mornings. There's days that I could be up and out and away I go and do whatever, but there's days that I just would stay in bed and just don't want to face the world. But then when I do go out and then I come back to the flat, it's like a jail sentence. It's like returning back to jail, because the flat is so compact. You go out and day, it's like going out and day release and then come back in again. Do you know what I mean? But it's alright, like, I have to tolerate it.
Roisin and Seanine say it's a familiar story.
It's because nobody knows nobody, and when we go around to our surveys, we get a lot of people say they're depressed and it's isolation, and because they don't know nobody, they can't meet up with anybody, and they're just really, really lonely in them.
It's once you close your door. Yeah. Once you close your door, then that's it. Even as a single parent, you're left sitting by yourself, looking at your four walls once the kids go to bed. Yeah. Or I had a phone down to her, and as I say, because there was nobody else there to mind the kids, we'd have just talked on the phone. But a lot of people don't even have anybody in the towers that they can even talk to, so they're just left sitting.
The isolation described by Seanine is one of many long-running issues here. But the residents are no longer dealing with the problems on their own. Since 2007, a group called Participation and Practice of Rights, or PPR, has been working with the people in the towers. Inez, who helped to establish the PPR project, explains.
The history of the PPR project, as I think it was Anderson News said, the best project on the island of Ireland and the worst named. Mary Robinson describes this as a groundbreaking project, which is actually lessons to learn for communities all over the world, because it's based on a very simple view that rights aren't made real unless the people who need them can use them.
Desi Donnelly works on the PPR project, and I met up with him at his office just round the corner from the towers. His group recently carried out a survey of residents. Although the results have yet to be published, Desi tells me that almost half of the 110 people questioned said that living in the towers has a negative impact on their health.
The question needs to be asked, is the quality of the housing both suited for a healthy quality of life? There's no play areas. The living conditions internally are cramped. Think of very practicalities. You have a kid, there's no dinner tables, no place to put a dinner table, so you end up having a family life where your dinners are eaten around on the couches and on the settees. Now it may seem like such a minor issue, but day in, day out, where you're struggling with 2 or 3 kids, it actually compounds and becomes a very stressful and unhealthy situation to live in. That all multiplies into extreme educational and health problems as well, developmental problems for the children, but then just the stress and the added impact on mothers and families.
Desi says that the residents could help to solve these problems if their views were taken on board by the people making decisions. His work highlights their concerns about not being involved. But he also points out how much the people in the towers have achieved.
Since we've been working with the residents and supporting the residents, there have been developments, positive developments, and I hesitant to use that word because while we work with residents on quite an intensive basis and then engage with the Housing Executive and the Department for Social Development to get movement on issues such as sewage, to try and address the issues of dampness, pigeon waste, we constantly go back to residents. At 6 monthly or quarterly basis, we go around and survey residents, we go in and talk to residents as well, and it's always a very stark reality check for us all because their conditions haven't changed. And that's the barometer whether this project and whether what the residents are doing is successful, if it actually filters down into other residents' lives. There has undoubtedly been a transformation in terms of confidence, capacities, and realising what was always there in terms of a lot of the women residents we're working with. But if that then doesn't translate into tangible changes for residents who live there, then it's not working.
So are the views of the people who live here being taken into account? The Housing Executive is responsible for maintaining the flats, and Maurice Johnson is the area manager.
Hi, Michael.
He says the Executive has worked hard to fix the problems like pigeon waste and damp. In fact, they've spent £14 million on the towers over the last 20 years.
They are a product of their time, I suppose. And a lot of money has been needed to be spent on them over the years to keep them fit for purpose. We have, over the last year and a half, provided this means of preventing access of the pigeons. Now, we have very recently become aware that there may be a point of access for the pigeons now at another part of the flats, which we're about to deal with over the next few weeks.
But people say they have a problem with damp. Now, that's what the residents would say, they have a problem with damp. But what would you say about that issue?
I would say that a lot of the problems that individual tenants have would be caused by condensation. We would accept certainly that there are some examples of dampness. There can be an element of a bit of dampness getting in, particularly around the windows and this type of thing. So I would say the problems that individuals are suffering here are a mixture of what we would define as real dampness and what we would call condensation. Now, I know as far as the people living in the flats are concerned, Kieran, damp's damp.
Are these flats fit for purpose, for the well-being of the people in them? Not the bricks and mortar, so we're not talking about the bricks and mortar, for people?
Yes, I'm sure there are a number of people living here with mental health issues. If we are aware of mental health issues with a new tenant, and we're not always aware of those, we can, with their agreement at that time, point them in the direction of providing a bit of support, what we call floating support. Nonetheless, with the work that has been done in the area, we certainly believe that the flats retain a level of popularity. There are people living in these blocks for a long time who have no wish to move out of them.
One of the proposals aimed at improving life here is a £7 million project to coat the outer walls in PVC and replace the window frames. Not everyone, though, thinks this is a solution, including Inez.
What are they proposing? To tart it up a bit, put a cladding on it, and instead of actually working out that high-rise density in Divis was a destructive mess. These high-rise flats are a destructive mess. The Housing Executive and the DSD are telling me this is a smart answer. Well, God help us if this is a smart answer.
Despite these concerns, the Housing Executive say it's the best solution in the medium to long term. Overall responsibility for the towers lies with the Department of Social Development, headed up by Margaret Ritchie. We met in her Stormont office.
I have a certain familiarity with the Seven Towers because way back before I ever became minister, back in 1981, I worked on the Antrim Road and used to pass the Seven Towers every day for 7 months, and I saw at that stage the condition of them, and that was during a period when the troubles were at their height. Whenever I became minister, I had a conversation back in June 2007 with Ines McCormick of the PPR. She indicated to me that she would like to see me along with Mr Donnelly from PPR to go out to visit them to see the condition. Very gladly I visited those flats back in July 2007, saw at first hand the amount of the need for cleaning up the flats, the need for environmental improvements in order to alleviate the concern of the residents.
A lot of remedial work has been carried out since the minister's visit. For decades there was a serious problem with the tower's sewerage system, but it's now been almost completely fixed. But what about the proposed cladding project, which the residents say won't solve the underlying problems, such as the damp?
Over the years, there has been considerable debate, not only in North Belfast, but in other parts of Northern Ireland, about the